If you take a look at the word progressive in the dictionary, you'll notice that it has a lot of different meanings. Now, not only is it a noun, it's also an adjective, and there's a lot of meanings in between. But at its core, progressive means progress. But you might associate progressive with a political movement, but really progressive means embracing new ideas. Now, if you take the word progressive and put it next to the word rock, well, that's where I get interested, because some of my biggest influences come from some really great progressive rock bands. These are bands that embrace new ideas, different elements and flavors that just weren't present in regular rock music. Now, perhaps you've never tackled progressive rock because you think it's too difficult. Well, there's a bunch of things you're probably already doing right now that with a minor little change, suddenly you're playing progressive rock, and I'm going to show those to you today. If you find that mildly progressive, well, why don't you join me? All right, let's dive into this. Now, one thing I want to mention right off the top, there's a lot of different eras of progressive rock and progressive metal, and some more modern forms of progressive rock and metal is that they'll detune a lot. Now, I'm not doing that today. I'm going to be in standard tuning. We're just going to be starting with the basics. The other thing, it's not a prerequisite, but it certainly doesn't hurt to have a hollow body Gibson when you're playing progressive rock. Again, not mandatory. Just thought I'd mention that. Anyway, so a really integral part of progressive rock is time signature. Changing the time signature, either odd meters or just inserting odd meters at different points or combining different time signatures. It's a really fun part of progressive rock. Now, if you're playing just some blues in 4/4, you can bake out and not even think about it. But when you're playing progressive rock and you've got different time signature changes, it forces you to concentrate more. Now, the thing I like about time signature changes, or just different time signatures other than 4/4, is it inspires different rhythms. Because when you're in 4/4, sometimes you start playing the same tried true riffs. But when you change the time signature, it forces you to think a little bit more. If you got a home studio like me, or you're recording at home, you can set your DAW to a 6, a 7, a 5, whatever you want. Just put it on a loop and just start jamming with it and start feeling it. Now, the thing you'll notice is that different time signatures do have different feels, right? Like, for example, 7/4, to me, it feels like you're dropping a beat every second bar of 4, right? Because if you count it 4 and then 3. 5/4 feels like you're just adding an extra beat. 6/4 is kind of interesting because sometimes it sounds almost like 4/4, and mathematically it could be, depending on what's being played, but it's got a more straight time feel to it, but there's definitely something a little bit extra there. So anyways, let's start. I'm going to play a very basic chord progression, something you've probably played a million times, just a D, an E, and a G. Now let's play it quickly in 4/4, just so we can hear that, something like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, if we want to make that interesting, let's, again, use 7. That's a number that's going to come up. You can do 5, 6, you can do whatever you want. But let's try it in 7. So we're going to count at a bar of 4 and a bar of 3, which is going to make up our 7, and it sounds something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So same progression, just counting a little bit different. And of course, you can build on that, making some more interesting things. Let's take a look at a couple of the other ones. 5/4, like I said, 5/4 really just is like adding an extra beat to every bar. Same chord progression. Let's hear how that sounds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, counting different time signatures, let's say like in a 7/4, counting 4 and then 3, or then counting 3 and then 4, it will inspire different rhythms. Just that in itself can help you come up with some different ideas, and it's really a lot of fun. Now, I'm going to dive deeper into the time signature thing. It's going to apply to some of the other sections, but really start to get comfortable with counting in different meters. It's an integral part of progressive rock. All right, so the next thing I want to take a look at is making some little adjustments to chords that we're already playing, just to make them sound a little bit more open, maybe make them sound a little bit bigger. These can apply in pop music as well. These chords are not exclusive to progressive rock, but in combination with some of the other things I'm talking about, this is when we can start sounding like a progressive rock guitar player. So the first thing is, I'm going to start with a basic chord progression again, something again you've probably played a million times. We've got a B minor, and we have an A. So if we're just strumming it. And like we just learned about time signatures, we can take that simple chord progression and let's make it in 5. 1, 2, 3. To come up with a different rhythm. But the next thing we want to do is, we're doing all that, let's start changing the chords themselves to make them sound bigger and more interesting. Now, using this B minor, just standard B minor, just lift off your finger so you're exposing the high E on the top. Everything else is fretted exactly the same, but we're introducing the open E. Again, this works in a lot of different genres, but you'll see in combination with time signature changes, we're going to start coming up with some more interesting things. And then the other one is that the A major, instead of playing it in first position, we've got the A bar chord that we can play at the 5th fret. Again, this is just basic one-on-one guitar. But same shape, just lift our fingers. We're fretting the 1st, the 5th, the octave, and the 3rd. But then we're exposing the open B and the open E. So we come up with something like this. So now we've taken a basic chord progression that now sounds like this. Now if we combine that with a time signature shift, let's do a 4 and a 3 again. So we'll do this in 7. It'll sound something like this. Now this chord right here, I call this the rush chord. Alex Lifeson did that a lot. You can play it on A, play it up at B. And my personal favorite, which is the ultimate rush chord, an F sharp. Listen for that one. But some interesting things you can do with basic chords by adding some open notes just to make them sound bigger. And just creates an interesting little shift to something that you're already playing. Again, in combination with time signature shifts and some of the other things that we're going to talk about. Now, this can apply to distorted chords as well, so let's check that out. So as guitar players, we're all familiar with the power chord. We can play that everywhere. You don't have to know what the key is. It will apply everywhere. Now, for progressive rock, power chords work really well actually as well, but sometimes we want to make it sound bigger. Again, I'm going to use Rush as a reference a lot, big influence on me. They were a power trio and the guitar player needed to fill some more space. So instead of doing a power chord, typical power chord, again, let's look in B. There's a couple things we can do to that. We can, what's the add 9? So in a B, we're adding the C sharp on top. You can just bar that. And suddenly a power chord that sounds like this will suddenly sound like this. Makes it sound a little bit more interesting. Now, there's a couple other things we can do to keep on building that chord. Same fingering. We're basically playing the power chord. If you're used to playing bar chords, it really doesn't make it that much harder. So we added that C sharp on top here. We can also bar all the way to the E string, in this case adding an F sharp, and we'll turn this power chord into this. And then if you want to get really big, you can bar all the way across and play all 6 strings. Again, this is a power chord that would be normally rooted on the 5th string, but just bar all the way across and just give her. Now if we just play the regular power chord, just do the full bar. That is an absolute staple in progressive rock. You can hear it all over all sorts of different progressive bands. It just makes a regular power chord sound that much bigger. And you can interchange it. You know, if you want to play some of those and mix it in with regular power chords, you can do that as well. Something like... You can add single notes and some regular power chords, perhaps if you need a turnaround, just to sort of stitch those things together, mix it up, regular power chords with some of these bigger power chords with a few extra notes. But these chords are really big sounding. You can wash it in flange and just come up with some really, really cool things. Again, mix it in with those time signature changes and then interchange with some dynamics, some clean to dirty. You can start coming up with some really, really cool ideas. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, certainly would love a like and a subscribe. But also, if you want to dive deeper into some conversations with me and some of my friends and other YouTubers, I've got the Lonely Rockers Club on Facebook. In fact, the idea for this video came out of a discussion that I had over there. We have a good time. I'm pretty much there every day. Link is in the description. Hope to see you there. So the next element I want to look at is runs, or using different runs as riffs within the context of a song. Now, as a guitar player, hopefully you're practicing your guitar, just, playing those scales. Doing that hopefully to get faster and faster and faster. Well, have you ever thought that those little scales that you've been practicing can actually be incorporated into a song? Well, I've prepared a couple of examples of how we can use these little runs or these little guitar practice scales and turn them into some riffs. Let's check that out. In progressive rock, runs can get super complicated. Some of those players are using crazy modes and all sorts of different time shifts and things like that. But we can start simply. We can just use major, minor, or even pentatonic scales. Set up like a click in your computer and just practice different patterns. It's a great device to sort of stitch two sections together. So I'm going to show you a couple of simple examples. Here's a simple example of a run in F sharp minor where I play 4 notes down the scale, go back up 2 notes, 4 down, etc. The main riff is in 4/4 and the run is 3 bars of 4/4. In example 2, I use the exact same scale, but this time the run is in 7/4. The change in time signature makes it more interesting and definitely more prog rock. Once you get comfortable with this, you can experiment with all sorts of scales and modes. All right, so the next thing I want to show you is something that you've probably been playing since the first year you played electric guitar. That's the old Johnny B. Good riff, right? Every guitar player has played that at some point. Really, you've just got a 5, you're just moving up 2 frets. Now, if you're already doing that, I've got something that's actually a little bit easier to play. Take that little stretch, just move it down 1. That's a sharp 5. Now, I wouldn't necessarily play it like that. Maybe you could, but you can take that, and there's something else you can do. You're already doing this stretch. Instead of playing this on the same string as the 5, move it up to the next string, and suddenly you have... That's like the Andy Summers chord, right? It's a good stretch, but you're already doing it. You're just moving it to the next string. Now, if we take some of those time signature things and maybe break it up into individual notes, we can start to do things like this. And you notice on that second half of the riff, that's just a power chord. I've just broken up the notes. And then every alternate time, I do that 9 in there. So again, it's the same stretch, but using these together, you can come up with some really, really interesting riffs, sort of mix it up, again, with time signature changes, even dynamic shifts with some clean guitar. They all work really, really well together. Just things to throw in your progressive rock toolbox. So what I want to do now is I want to take all of the elements that I just showed you and put them to practical use so you can see how they all fit together. I put a little song together, and then on the screen I'll show you and point out all the different elements so you can follow along at home. But I just want to leave you with a couple little things. Now, one thing, if you're creating 2 different parts and they don't really fit that well together, you can stitch them together with sound effects. Yes, sound effects. Progressive rock is littered with all kinds of sound effects. You've got lightning, you've got rain, and you have wind. Yes, wind. I love wind. If it's not working, have a little gap, put some wind in between, and suddenly you've stitched those 2 bits together. Now, the other thing is we have to name our song, right? Progressive rock songs can't have like just basic songs like Happy Day or something like that. You want to come up with something really interesting. So what I do is I sort of try to pick out a characteristic of the song. And here's a tip. Look at Google Maps, just fish around, maybe find some little town, maybe in and around where you live or someplace that you've never been or a favorite place. So I think what I'm going to do, I think I figured this out. We've already got our wind. It's a key element of this song. And there's a little part of east of Toronto called Scarborough. And I think we put those two together. I've got a song that I'm going to show right now that I call The Winds of Scarborough. Well, there you have what I hope was a meaningful introduction to some progressive rock stylings. I love progressive rock. I just love how you can experiment, and there's really no rules. That's what makes it so fun. Certainly you can go and be a little too crazy at times, but really it gives you a lot more to work with. And the truth is, some of the concepts that you may have learned in this video, you can apply to regular rock music. It doesn't have to be progressive rock. Sometimes shaking it up a little bit just might be what the song is asking for. It really depends. The beauty is that there's really no rules. Would love to know what you thought about this video. That's what the comment section is for. If you want to do a deeper dive with me, I'm on Patreon. I have affiliate links. I even have merch. All that information is down below. But the most important thing is to check out another video. I've got one waiting for you right here. And remember, you don't need a band to rock and roll. And I look forward to seeing you again in another video.